Hi, thank you all for joining us. We started these sessions a few weeks ago as a way to announce new unemployment insurance related federal programs that were specifically to address the pandemic. We wanted to answer questions about them and to announce other policies that were responding to the crisis and the anxiety of this moment. I learned by listening to you that people also have a lot of questions about UI itself. This remains a difficult time for many people. Over 5 million Californians have applied for unemployment insurance or pandemic unemployment assistance, or PUA, in the last 3 months. And by every measure, including comparisons to the 2008 recession, the economic impact of the pandemic has been extraordinary. I know some of you have returned to work. I've also heard from many businesses who are working on reopening and the challenges and opportunities in that. And we in the administration are continuing to collaborate to provide science-based guidance to workers and businesses, employees and employers. Today, we are going to try and answer many questions you have asked me and have asked EDD about UI and PUA. Since March 15th, EDD has distributed over $27.7 billion in benefits to Californians. This includes both federal dollars and basic UI benefits. And this is due to the extraordinary work of EDD. I've talked about this before. The governor has also mentioned that back on Easter Sunday, we gave our EDD team the option of taking the day off, and over 500 decided to work. Over Memorial Day weekend, the same thing was true. There were over 700 people who said, I'm going to keep on working through the weekend to get these critical benefits out. And because of the extraordinarily high demand, EDD, under the direction of Director Sharon Hilliard, has been tirelessly working. And in my role as Labor Secretary, I've been trying to work creatively and strategically alongside them to meet the demands. I issued a call to all labor agency departments, divisions, boards, and panels for volunteers to assist with a weekend effort to try to get a group of claims completed. And over 400 people stepped up, were trained, and processed claims over that weekend. I processed claims also along with many other members of the labor agency team, and that's part of my commitment and our commitment as the labor agency to helping EDD in partnership. We've also been working to improve communication. 2 weeks ago, EDD began a proactive texting effort where the texts would confirm that cases had been filed. And then just this past Sunday, EDD started texting about the PEUC 13-week extensions, letting people know that that had been filed for them. Also about whether ID verification was needed, and ID verifications had been completed. So many people are starting to get those texts. We're rolling things out. So if you haven't gotten it, it's not to panic, but we are starting to do more and more to try to make sure that we are communicating as effectively and proactively as we can. I'm happy to say that less than 1% of people, because we gave people the option to opt out of the texting, chose to opt out. So that whole anxiety about what's going on with my claim, we're trying to use texting as one way to get information out. And then finally, EDD has been doing more town halls with legislators, and we're working closely with your elected representatives also to meet the demand. I know that there are still many people who are waiting for benefits during this very hard time. I've said in this space that the pandemic has revealed deep fractures and inequities in our society. Now, the brutal killings of George Floyd, of Breonna Taylor, and the righteous voices that are calling for real transformation and a reckoning with racism, especially anti-Black racism, further demands that all of us, particularly those of us who are in positions of power, recommit ourselves to equity and to racial justice. As someone who has worked my entire career for racial justice, I know that we have work to do. The governor has been explicit about the fact that our systems and our institutions need to change, and all of my team at the labor agency and all the departments under the labor agency, especially as we work to reopen our economy, are committed to ensuring that our efforts, our enforcement, the economy and the jobs and access to those jobs advance the cause of racial justice. So today, we're not going to be able to answer individual claims. We are going to take questions that have been sent to me. I've received literally thousands of emails, and my team and I have been reviewing them. We're not able to respond to all of them, but what we have tried to do is gather them and really try to come up with a way to answer the most pressing ones in hopefully a way that will be helpful, reduce some of the anxiety, and let you know what to expect. We've seen questions about delays, questions that fall into certain patterns, and we're going to try to address those here today. So in order to do that, I'm really pleased and grateful to welcome Loree Levy. Loree Levy is joining us today as the Deputy Director of Public Affairs at EDD. She's been with EDD for 19 years. She's taught me a tremendous amount about UI. I often joke with the EDD team that I am working toward getting to some semblance of expertise, but they are the real experts on UI. And she's worked closely with the UI program at EDD, including through past recessions. So I want to thank you so much for being here, Loree.
Oh, thanks for having me, Julie.
So Loree, I'm going to jump in. The first question I'm going to ask you is about pending status. We get this question a lot. Sometimes this happens after a first payment, and it's frustrating because people then feel like, you know, they're in some kind of limbo. And cases that fall into pending are obviously now taking longer than the 3 weeks that the majority of people are seeing their benefits getting paid. So when someone sees pending on their claim, what does it mean?
Well, thank you, first of all, again, for the opportunity, Secretary Sue, to be among you. And I think all of us at EDD appreciate the support you provided and giving us really the authorities, the flexibility to do a lot of things to try to keep up with this historic and challenging time. I mean, unfortunately, it was a perfect storm hitting us at record low unemployment when we had low staffing and low funding levels. So, you know, we were having to try to expand our capacity as quickly as possible on a daily basis. And we've been able to meet a lot of need, but you're right, there's a lot of people out there are still struggling. So we really appreciate the opportunity and continue to strategize daily on what we can do to really fully meet this moment. So thank you for your support and kind of as a major team effort on this. And I would say that pending is really one of those things that tends to be a very big question for a lot of people. And I think it all kind of stems oftentimes too from this is being very new to a lot of people. Unemployment insurance can be very complex. It's got a lot of rules and requirements. And then you add in all the new federal provisions that makes it a little bit more complex as well. And so I kind of wanted to first of all explain that pending or eligibility is really kind of something we have to look at on a bi-weekly basis. So when you first apply, we have to look at your eligibility, and gratefully, most Californians were able to automatically process through our system. But there are always those that we're going to take some more time, whether we're in a pandemic or not. And that usually has to do with identity verification. It has to do with don't have information from the claimant that matches wage records that we have. There's been mistakes made on the application. But then there's also that point in time when somebody has a bi-weekly certification. Certification is kind of an odd thing for a lot of people new to this. It means every 2 weeks you have to tell us here at EDD that you remain unemployed or with reduced hours through no fault of your own, and you've got to meet ongoing eligibility requirements. And you've got to tell us that every 2 weeks in order to get your next benefit payment. So there are some times when somebody may get a payment, and then the following week or biweekly payment, it'll say pending, which means that we've gotten something from you on that biweekly certification that we now have to review for staff. Our goal is to get as much as we can through automatically processing, and then see if we can avoid that extra staff level as much as possible. So in essence, pending means we couldn't automatically process it. We now have to have staff follow up on an eligibility issue. And that's what's happening is we're reviewing that. That's why it shows pending.
Thank you so much, Lori. Right. You've explained to me before that sometimes people will mark that they were sick, for example, but they're really, what they're saying is that, the COVID pandemic affected their workplace. And so some of those issues are, they can be resolved and they will be resolved, but it does create a delay, and because it requires staff to take a look at those kinds of issues. Is that right?
Right. When you first file your claim, we have to clear some of those things. Like we've got to make sure you are who you say you are. So we got to verify your identity. We do that with the Social Security Administration and the DMV. We've also got to make sure that what you're reporting to us in wages matches what we have here. Otherwise, sometimes we might have to go through a wage investigation. But on those biweekly certifications, one of the most important things people need to know is that you have to stay able and available to work every 2 weeks in order to be able to collect that payment, which means that there's the first question, for example, there's about 6 basic questions on a certification, and it asks you, were you too sick to work during this particular week? And we will have to deduct money from your payment, your unemployment benefit payment, if you were, because you weren't able to work that particular day or days. And what we found is many people are marking that saying, yes, we can't pay them benefits for that week. But what we find out when we follow up is the person said, no, I wasn't sick. There's just that COVID out there. So I just thought I had to reply yes. So I think that goes back to the confusion and this being so new for so many people. So really pay strict attention, I would say to people on those questions, make sure you answer them truthfully, and then hopefully we don't have any mistakes that unnecessarily stop things and keep them from getting processed. The other thing, Julie, I would say is a common one is what we call excessive earnings. So particularly now when people are starting to return to work. So if you go back, reduced hours, which is probably the case for a lot of people right now, you do have to report on your biweekly certification form when you do have earnings and how much in earnings. And we have to look at that and deduct a portion of that from your unemployment benefits. It may mean that you don't get, it's pending, we review that. We can do so pretty quickly and you may not get benefit payments for that by that week, but you could in a following week, depending upon how much you earned then. So it really is an ongoing eligibility check that we have to do.
Perfect. So, Lori, if someone is pending, what should they do? Is there action they need to take? Should they keep an eye out for communication from ADD? What should I do if I'm in a pending, if my UI online shows that I'm pending?
Right. Well, first of all, we'll try to keep you posted. I mean, I think you mentioned really good, brilliantly there at the beginning about the new text messages so people can get kind of a status update. Obviously, this is a very stressful time. Unemployment is always one of the most difficult times in someone's life. So we want to make sure they're getting updated on the status of their claim. Watch for updates. A lot of times people don't even realize that you can continue to certify for your benefits while a particular benefit period may be pending. So please do so. Continue to certify so that when we can get that cleared, then we can go ahead and pay that as quickly as possible. Now, in some cases, we'll be able to kind of like take care of like a wrong date or something like that. We weren't able to auto process it, but we can kind of work on that as a staff person and get that cleared up pretty quickly. In other cases, we're going to have to set up what's called a determination interview. And we will send you a notice that says, here's when we're going to call. And we really need people to be available during that particular point in time and take the time to talk to our representatives so that we can talk with you, we can get the information we need. We may also have to contact your employer to get some information to make that determination. But again, we're trying to do and take care of these things as quickly as possible. So check to make sure you follow those notices. Check in your UI online account for status updates in your inbox. That also helps in keeping you informed.
What's the difference between pending and not paid?
Well, in a pending situation, it means that we're looking at it. Staff is reviewing it. There could be something that you reported to us on that particular biweekly certification that we've got to verify. Not paid means when there's something that happened there that didn't qualify you for benefits for that particular week. For instance, in the case of someone who was reporting they were sick all week, or someone who was on vacation out of the area, couldn't work for that particular week, had excessive earnings, so you won't be paid for that week, so not paid. So that's really kind of the difference. Pending, we're looking at it. Not paid mean there's been a determination made that you weren't eligible for benefits in that particular week.
So if you're pending, EDD is working on it. If you're not paid, then determination has been made about your eligibility. Is that right?
At least for that particular week or that particular biweekly period. Exactly.
Right. Very good. Thank you. There's a lot of questions from people who needed ID verification. Can you just explain that?
Sure. I mean, in order to protect people's personal identifying information and to protect the integrity of the program and protect it from fraud, we do some real-time checking and verifying the information you give us. We check with the Social Security Administration, we check with the DMV, and if some information comes in that does not match what we have here at EDD, we are required to put you and divert you. Unfortunately, that means we can't auto-process that claim, and we have to divert you to staff for follow-up. And that typically means that we now must follow up with you with a notice that says, we need more documentation from you. So you can tell us, prove to us you are who you say you are. And then once we can go ahead and get that documentation and get through it and so forth, then we can send you a notice. If we've been able to clear that, you should be able to see an update in your UI online. You'll get a notice, that kind of thing. And then you can continue to certify for your benefits. So unfortunately, with the massive amount of volume that we have right now, some of these things may be taking a little bit more time than usual, but we have redirected hundreds of people and trained them to assist us with this particular effort. In fact, we focused on it entirely throughout the course of the Memorial Day weekend that you mentioned. And that's really helping us get to that point of getting through a lot of these particular claims. We're going to text you, for instance, when we're able to verify your identity, and now you're going to be able to move on in your claim. But the one thing we have found, Julia, I think is a really good thing for people to know, is in many cases, people transpose their social security number. And the good thing we've been able to do is kind of initiate an alert on that. So if indeed you enter in your social security number and it's not correct, you'll get another shot at it saying, wait a minute, it's not matching up with the Social Security Administration, re-enter it, make sure it's correct. And we really hope that so people can avoid some of this frustration, double check. It says at the end of your application, make sure you go back and double check everything. It's true and accurate before you hit that submit button, so we can avoid some of these delays that are unnecessary, only maybe because something got a little mixed up when reporting it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Laura. I know we've talked about this some internally, right? That when we can improve the system, we will make sure that EDD is really committed to making sure that some of these things that that allow for errors to be submitted and then create long delays while people are waiting, that we can try to eliminate those. But I know both of us have said this oftentimes publicly, especially in the last couple months, to really urge people to be very careful. I've heard from lots of people said, well, you know, I was applying on my phone, and so I hit the wrong number. What do I do now? And I think what you're saying is at that point, it is an ID verification issue, and
Yeah.
and people will be asked to send in records, right?
Right.
Okay,
Mhm.
so something very common is I sent my documents for ID verification weeks ago. I know they arrived at EDD and I'm still waiting. I think you just described why. It's just sheer volume of cases. But what should I do if I'm in that category?
I think understanding, first of all, that we're going to try to keep you updated. So if you've already sent them to us, if you haven't sent them to us, we are starting to send out texts. And we've sent out more than 2 million texts so far. And one of those texts will tell you, yes, you're going to have to give us some extra documentation. So alert you into the status of your claim. Another text will arrive that says, we've received and we have now verified your identity. Now look for updates in your UI online account or through the mail, the postal mail, for what to do next. So keep an eye on those things for updates. And if indeed you do have issues, you can still submit a question through your UI online account. Or of course, there's always the phone lines if somebody really truly has to speak with somebody. But we're really asking everyone to please help us help you at this time of incredible volume. We went from low staffing levels to we're now hiring 4,800 staff over the next few weeks, but we really will need people's help. If there's information that you can get through the resources we have on our website, or watch those updates on your UI online account, and maybe you can get some information there so you don't have to encounter the frustration of getting through on the phone lines. And we can hopefully preserve some access on those phone lines for those who truly have to speak to a representative to clear up a complex issue.
Some people also get what a $0 determination.
Yeah.
I think you've said before that could be an ID verification issue. It could be something else. What do I do if I get a $0 determination? And do I need to appeal that?
Thank you for asking that. I think that's one of the most common questions, and that's why we do have a good frequently asked question on our website about that specific thing. If you get an award notice that says $0 available, it doesn't necessarily mean you've been disqualified or denied. It basically can mean a couple of things. Number one, we cannot verify your identity, and so we can't release any wages that we have here until we can actually be sure that you are who you say you are. So we're going to have to go through that identity alert process and get some additional documents from you. It could also mean that we've checked our wage records and we don't have any wages here that are reported by an employer. However, it's a possibility you may have been misclassified. And so we really need to make sure that when you apply, provide all the income that you've got there. And if it is a case where you think you've been misclassified, be sure to respond to that, correct those wages. You can send that award notice to us at the address on that notice so we can get that information and we can conduct a wage investigation. So there are a couple of things that can happen on that $0 award notice. The other thing I would say has been kind of common is some people, you mentioned pandemic unemployment assistance, and that's designed for the self-employed business owners, independent contractors. Some people applied in early April, for instance, and got denied because, again, we didn't have any wages reported by an employer. However, they never went back to apply after we launched the pandemic unemployment assistance program April 28th. I've talked to several people that was their situation. Please, if that is you and you are truly a self-employed individual, you applied before April 28th, go back in and apply now. We now have the capability to really look at those 1099 wages and to be able to process the claim as a pandemic unemployment assistance claim. So those are some of the reasons why a $0 award notice would be received. And there are some options on what to do there before you need to appeal if you don't agree with the decision.
I do have some questions that about PUA, but let me first say, so it sounds like one thing, and you've said this here, and I've learned this from you and everyone at EDD, is that no two claims are really the same. So if you see something happening to somebody else and you feel like that suggests that something's wrong with your claim, that's really not something that we would want people to assume, because everyone has different circumstances that are in their application, in their work history, in their wages, and that sort of thing. So let me ask a question, because there's a group of people who have been serving penalty weeks, and it's been a very confusing time for them. Calling the call center has not helped. Can you explain what EDD is doing when it comes to people serving penalty weeks?
Absolutely. What we're trying to do is maximize someone's access to benefits wherever possible. So in order to do that, for instance, penalty weeks are usually served when someone's made a false statement in the past. Something, the most common form is when somebody has returned to work and started collecting earnings, but not telling us and continue to collect unemployment benefits. So if that happens, and there's a number of ways we get wages reported to us by employers, then we can establish what's called a penalty week. And you have to meet all eligibility, just not get paid for that week you serve it as a penalty week. But luckily, under the new pandemic unemployment assistance program, someone with penalty weeks can earn benefits if you are unemployed as a direct result of the pandemic and you meet all eligibility requirements. So what we're doing for some folks that have been, for instance, unemployed and having penalty weeks after February 2nd, we've been able to get them on a pandemic unemployment assistance claim and to get them some kind of benefits until those penalties then are taken care of, and then we can return them to a regular unemployment insurance claim.
Great. And then there's the self-certifications in that realm, right, Loree, that have gone out.
Right.
I heard from lots of people who say, you said I get a self-certification, I haven't gotten it yet. What should they do?
Yeah, basically you are required to certify every 2 weeks in order to collect your next benefit payment. So in some cases, when we're going back and some folks, we've had to do some retroactive payments, you still have to certify. You might do that a little differently. Those certifications may arrive in your inbox, for instance, in rapid succession, or we'll be able to catch up with you on some back weeks, for example, that'll be a little different, but you still do have to certify for every 2 weeks of benefit payments that you receive.
Right. Yeah, I think it was important for people to hear that that is happening, even though it's people feel like they've been waiting and then they are afraid that they've like fallen through the cracks. And many people who had penalty weeks are actually appealing. If they win their appeal, what happens to their payments?
If they win an appeal, in other words, an administrative judge says that, okay, I'm overturning this penalty, you don't have to serve these penalties. If indeed that you have served those penalties, EDD then will pay you back for those weeks on a regular unemployment insurance claim. You're moved to a regular unemployment insurance claim if that's what you qualified for. And then you can continue to collect, certify every 2 weeks and collect benefit payments on that regular unemployment insurance claim.
Great, thank you. And Lori, one thing that might be helpful, you've explained this to me now, is, sometimes people say, you'll move to here and if you could be eligible and you could be that, and that sounds confusing. Can you just
Right.
talk a little bit about UI eligibility? Like, why is that such a big deal, and why, what are the issues that people might face? Why don't you just say, we'll just move you to this and you'll definitely get this? Why is that not the case with UI?
And and I think that's such a common question. So I'm glad you asked that, Julie. Regular unemployment insurance is an insurance program. So in other words, somebody has to have contributed on your behalf in order to be eligible for benefits. And for most of us, that's our employers. Some self-employed individuals will also contribute on their behalf to get some insurance coverage. But I'd say because of that, it is something that's required of eligibility, very much like your car insurance. When you pay car insurance, you get into some kind of wreck, you have to meet some eligibility in order to get certain payments on that. It's the same kind of thing. There are eligibility requirements. Chief among them are being able and available to work for each week of benefits that you claim. In other words, you're telling us I am unemployed or I have hours reduced through no fault of my own. I'm able and available to work. Most of the time, we require you to be looking for work, actively looking for work. We've been able to adjust that usual eligibility requirement for most people because of these stay-at-home orders. So that will not prevent someone from collecting benefits at this point. So I always tell people, don't worry about answering that question on their certification form for right now. But those are the reasons it is an eligibility-based program. There are a lot of rules and regulations, and I think you said it best, that every person's case is different. It's a case by case. I may be working side by side with somebody. We do the same kind of job, but each of us has a little different employment history over the last 18 months. And it is a partial wage replacement program. In other words, you had to have earned some wages and over enough wages over the last 18 months to support a claim. So all of those things kind of come into this mix of you have to meet ongoing eligibility requirements, not just when you apply, but every 2 weeks to continue to meet that. If you don't for 1 week or another, for whatever reason, like excessive earnings for a week, it doesn't necessarily mean you won't get paid the following week. It all depends on the circumstances you report to us for each week.
Great, thank you, Laura. And so then just one last thing for those serving penalty weeks, if they've appealed, they win their appeal, you said, they can, if they're eligible for UI, they can get back on UI. So the idea is that, if you had PUA and then you get moved back to UI, if you were eligible for that, then you're not going to lose money. We're not going to take back any money. That's not the way this works, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't collect on two programs at one time. So we would take your weeks that you've had on the PUA program and transfer them to your UI program. But in other words, you will not, if it takes us a little longer to be able to process your claim, you are found eligible for those weeks, those particular weeks, you will get that money paid to you. So even if you return to work now, that money will process. And if you're found eligible, you'll receive those benefits.
So let me go to PU. You talked about PUA. I get this question a lot, and you may see it too. I've received my PUA award letter, but I haven't received any payments yet. Why and what should I do?
Well, on that award letter, it says that you have been found potentially eligible. And so if you continue to meet all eligibility requirements, so it's telling you, here's what you could qualify for. Then you've got to move into that certification period. So on that first certification, did you meet all these requirements? And particularly on the PUA program, your unemployment has to be as a direct result of the pandemic. So it means this is the award you can get. Go ahead and certify. Those weeks should show up for you. And then if you're telling us that you meet all the eligibility requirements, you'll be able to receive that payment.
What if I applied for PUA because I was unemployed due to COVID-19 as of a certain date, but EDD didn't start my claim until after that date?
Right. That is the case in some cases. Like for instance, somebody couldn't get through on the phone and was trying to file on the phone. By the time we do have a process by which we can backdate your claim to the point in time in which you tell us you were impacted by the pandemic, your work was. So that is something that we can do on the phone. But of course, one of the best things people can do, if you feel like we have the wrong start date for your claim, then there is a new feature in our Ask EDD function on our EDD website. It's Ask EDD. It's through Contact Us at the very bottom on our footer of our website. And you go into unemployment insurance category and then claims questions. And it says right there, you can select backdate my claim. That's probably the easiest thing for people to do if you feel like your claim should be backdated. This is a priority for us. We have people working that particular element so that we can try to move on those as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And Laura, I just want to emphasize something else you said, which is if you are eligible for benefits, whether they be UI or PUA, this is an extraordinary time. There has been delays. People have been waiting, but you will get the benefits that you are eligible for and you are entitled to, right? There's not a, like if I go back to work, or if, now, some time period passes, the benefits that I should have had, I'm just not going to be able to get it now.
Right, that won't be the case. If indeed you're found eligible for a certain period of time in those weeks, you will receive those benefit payments. So, we know this has been an extraordinarily difficult time for people, and that's why we continue to strategize daily and how we can expand our capacity as quickly as possible. So hang in there with us. We're working to get to everybody just as quickly as possible.
Lori, one more question about the PUA, which is when will I get the increase from the $167 per week minimum?
Right. So it works a little differently than the regular UI program in that regard. The minimum is $167 on the brand new pandemic unemployment assistance program. And what usually happens is we go ahead, we take from you the information you provide for us on the application that says what you made in your earnings throughout the calendar year 2019. And then we can instantly move to, if you meet all eligibility requirements, issuing you a minimum payment of $167. But then we're able to recalculate based on what you provided to us. And if indeed what you provided to us meets some of those more maximum levels, then we can actually give you a second award notice. Usually might be just a couple of days in between, and which gives you a higher benefit amount all the way up to a maximum of $450 a week. And that's the benefit amount that you would receive from that point on each time you certify. So it's kind of a 2 award notice thing. You start with the 167, we go in, recalculate based on the information given to us, and you can receive 2 award notices pretty quickly. And most of the time you've had to have made at least, I think, $17,300, something like that in calendar year 2019 to get some kind of increase. To get the maximum of $450 a week, it's somewhere over, I think, 46,000. So those are the kind of the things that we look for when we're looking at your application, and we will contact you if we need some additional information to help us process that and see if indeed you could earn a higher benefit amount.
Great. So if your income was high enough to justify an increase and you haven't seen it yet, it's likely coming. And if you are asked for more information to confirm your income, then make sure to respond to EDD when they ask about that, right?
Absolutely, right.
Okay. So this is a question about PEUC, right? Which is the 13-week extension of regular UI that was under the CARES Act. And there's been one area of confusion that I have heard about is some people were on UI, then they were switched to PUA, and then they stopped getting PUA, and now they're supposed to get a 13-week extension. What do I do if I'm in that situation?
And first of all, let me say that sounds so confusing, and it is. I really feel for people. Some of these new federal provisions that have been added through the Federal CARES Act have been extraordinarily complex. And so I can understand why it is so confusing for people. But please know, if you see that kind of movement on your claim, it's just a reflection of EDD trying to maximize your access to benefit payments where we can. So for example, if indeed you're in your current benefit year, So that's a 12-month period. When you initiate a claim, it's good for 12 months. But if you're in that 12-month period, sometime that started after June 2nd, 2019, and you've exhausted all your available benefits sometime after February 2nd, what we can do is we can go in and say, all right, for now, we can move you to a PUA claim to at least get you some access to benefits, at least up until the point where we have now the PEUC extension in place. We can stop your PUA claim and then transfer you to the extension. That's up to an additional 13 weeks of federal funding for you. And so that's where you're going to see that. It was our way of trying to fill that gap for people who have still within their benefit year, ran out of all available benefits. Let's see if we can transfer you to a PUA claim for a bit of time. That's between February 2nd and the end of March. And then once you get there, we can transfer you back to a PEUC claim in order to keep your regular claim going and get you that access to the additional 13 weeks. Very convoluted, very confusing sounding, I understand, but it's just our way of trying to maximize people's access to benefits and fill those gaps where we can.
Questions about disability. If I am on or was on disability, can I still get UI? And how does getting disability benefits affect UI?
Well, it's certainly that those kind of things happen, right? Somebody can be on disability and then the place where they work goes out of business or temporarily furloughed, for example. If that happens, you can file for an unemployment insurance claim at that time. And then what'll probably happen is we need to look at your claim because no one can be on a disability insurance and an unemployment insurance claim at the same time. So we'll have to kind of look at the nature of your claim. That's one of those case by case basis. We'll follow up with you on a determination if you collect some more information if we need it to make a determination about whether or not you can start an unemployment insurance claim. And then again, it all kind of depends too of, are you still ill? Are you prevented from working? We'll be looking through those kinds of eligibility issues.
So now there are questions, and you already alluded to this, is when people are going back to work, what does that mean? What does that mean for past benefits? So how do I certify or recertify? How do I do my continuous certification if I'm going back to work? And specifically also, Laura, if you could answer, like, what if I'm not back to my regular hours yet?
Right. And I think that's going to be the case for a lot of people right now as we start to slowly reopen, right? So in some situations, if you're back at work, you're working your normal hours, all you have to do is just stop certifying. And what that does is it means that, okay, we understand there's no need for you to be collecting benefits at this point in time, but your claim will still be available for a 12-month period. So in the near future, if you happen to go back into a situation where you're not collecting any earnings, you can reopen your claim and then continue to certify for benefits at that time. Now, in the situation where you said some people have gone back to work for reduced hours, what we would do then is we would request that you submit that, and you're required to put that on your continued claim form. So I've gone back, I'm now earning less than I did when I was fully working. I put on my certification form, yes, I've gone back to work, but it's minimal hours. Here's what my earnings are. And then what happens is we look at that on your continued claim or your certification form, and we say, okay, what we can do is we can deduct some of it. We don't have to look at some of it to deduct from your benefits, and the rest we do. So you may get a reduced unemployment benefit amount. And a good example of that, for example, is if you earned $100 in a week, we look at that and we don't look at the first $25. We say, okay, don't worry about that. The other $75, we have to subtract from your benefit amount. So if you were earning $450 in an unemployment benefit amount for a week, and you were one of those people who earned $100 from your job, then we would get you a reduced benefit amount of $350 or $375. That's $75 off the $450. So that's the way it works, is you report to us what earnings you are collecting. We look at that and we deduct a portion of it from the unemployment benefits. And the good news is, even if you're receiving just $1 left in your unemployment benefit, once we deduct those earnings, you can still receive the extra $600 federal stimulus payment. So as long as you're collecting some kind of regular UI or PUA benefit amount for a week, we can automatically add that extra $600 in federal stimulus money at least through the end of July.
And some people have expressed concern that if they're back to work now, they won't get benefits for the time they were actually unemployed. Could you just speak to that?
No, again, if indeed we had your claim and we're looking at that, we're examining the eligibility, we determine you're eligible, we will be able to go back and pay you for that point in time based on your eligibility and whether or not you meet all those requirements. So that money will be coming.
Well, I just got this question too. I wonder if you could answer. If I go back to work on Friday, will I still get paid unemployment for that week?
And again, it's kind of like you're required to tell us like what happened on each day during that week. So if you earned a little bit of money on one day, you would report that, but it wouldn't necessarily completely eliminate your benefit payment. It just all depends on how much you earned and how much has to be deducted from your unemployment benefit payment. So again, any earnings you collect, just put it on your continued claim form, your certification, and then we'll look at that to see what has to be deducted.
Um, is there a callback list? So if I called in and I was told you'll get called, what happens? And if I was told I get a call back within 48 hours or 5 to 7 days and I haven't gotten that, why haven't I heard?
You know, and that's a very good question. I'd say that kind of stems from the fact that it takes a good 6 months to fully train a representative on the complexities of the unemployment insurance program. We have tried to quickly expand our capacity during this historic time. So we've brought hundreds of people in, redirected hundreds of people throughout the department, even throughout state government to come to us. We've given them a few days of training, and that really has helped us with some general questions. But for those with more complex issues, by all means, it really does take someone a little bit more experienced to be able to answer a true claim specific question. So if the person you receive on the phone isn't able to assist you with a more complex question, we do have a callback list that can be referred to a more experienced person to call back, and you'll be notified at that time.
Great. I hope that this is a simple question. If I receive a notice that there's a message waiting for me from EDD, but I go into my UIO account and don't see anything, what should I do?
Right. I mean, I worked with a woman the other day who she says, I got my claim in. I don't understand what's happening. Why am I not getting any payment? I said, well, did you check your inbox of your UI online account? Because that'll tell you if there are weeks there to certify. And so she's, oh, and it was, again, so new to so many people, particularly the self-employed, because we've never really had a program designed for them in the past. So we went on, we looked at her inbox, and it's right up the right-hand side at the top of your home page there, and it says, you know, kind of if there's updates for you or there's weeks to certify. So I'd really encourage people to make sure you check out that inbox of your UI online account and keep an active monitoring it, you know, often, so you can be kept aware of all those updates that are coming to you.
Well, thank you, Lori. I do know, that the people who are contacting us say they're constantly looking at UI online. They're constantly trying to, see what's happening with their claim. We also hear from hundreds of people who do get paid, but I really want to thank you for being here, because I imagine the ones who are listening are the ones who are still waiting and experiencing great anxiety due to that. I appreciate you being really honest and frank about some of the challenges and the timelines. And I think, you said it takes time to train EDD staff. Certainly, as someone who's tried to learn as I go and has now spent some time looking at claims, I can definitely see why it does take time. There's lots of complexities. There's lots of individualized issues in cases, and we are you said EDD is hiring, right? So we are hoping that people who want to come in and help us will apply for those positions. And I know that EDD will continue the hard work and will be training new staff. And our goal is to obviously get to 100% of everybody who is eligible for and should be getting benefits to get them. So thank you so much, Lori. If there's anything you want to say in closing?
I just want to say that I hope people understand that we care very deeply about people who are struggling through this pandemic. And that's why we continue to work around the clock, 7 days a week, to really kind of do everything possible to maximize our system, increase messages to people, hire the 4,800 additional staff as quickly as possible, basically increase our capacity so we can fully meet this moment. And it really is important for anybody who can. There's some great resources on our website, frequently asked questions that we are updating constantly, the great unemployment benefit guide that we have out there. That's a real good step-by-step process about how to apply. So hopefully we can minimize people's mistakes on the application, and even a step-by-step chart that really helps people understand the process even after they apply. There's video tutorials in 5 different languages, a lot of really good information there that I'm hoping people can completely avail themselves of. And then they can avoid some of the frustrations of trying to wait to get through on the phone as we continue to work to expand our capacity just as quickly as possible. And we really thank you for your support in helping us do that on a daily basis, Secretary Sue.
Thank you so much, Loree, and thank you everybody for listening in. We will be back with other leaders throughout the labor agency to talk about other issues that we face, certainly health and safety in the workplace, and all of the efforts we are making to ensure that we're building a just economy as we reopen and rebuild. So thank you, Loree, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.